Hi, this is Lunch with Laura. I'm so happy you can join us today. Our topic today is going to be reestablishing your identity after your breakup. I have some notes, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. Anyway, this talk today is going to involve some legal information, but they make me say this is our disclaimer, that it may have legal information, but it's not intended to be legal advice, and if you need to see a lawyer, please visit a lawyer in your area. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about, again, reestablishing your identity after your breakup. And one of the main things is, after you break up, obviously, you're not a couple anymore. Your status changes. You're not you're not a unit anymore. You're still working together. If you have kids, you're co-parenting. Yes, you're doing that. But the shift or the difference is, you're not a couple. You're not one unit anymore in the same way that you were in your marriage. And so that has to be just a shift that you have to make in your look like. And so one of the things is just kind of looking at yourself and seeing your identity as, okay, I'm a single woman or a single mom, and I have to start thinking about the things I need to do for myself, the things that I used to rely on my ex for. Now I have to make a shift and a change, and to understand that type of dynamic changes for you. The second thing is, and I promised that I would mention this, someone had asked me, what if you wanted to change your name? So, there might be a name change in your divorce. And a lot of times, even if you are keeping your married name, say, for example, if you have kids and you want to keep the same name as your kids, and that's very common. That's very, very common. But you're still not Mrs., whatever. Yeah, you're maintaining that name, but it doesn't have the same feeling. It doesn't have the same, you don't have the same legal rights anymore as you did when you were married. And so your identity changes from that. You feel differently about carrying that name. Yes, you're carrying it for the sake of your kids, but it doesn't have the same meaning for you anymore. And so your identity changes that way. You have different feelings. Sometimes people feel very like a fish out of water. That's the best way to explain it. They kind of feel like a fish out of water. They don't really know how to kind of grapple with that. Yes, my name is still Mrs. So-and-so, but he's not my husband anymore. And sometimes it takes a while to get used to how that kind of incorporates and filters into your life. So please be patient with yourself. If you're maintaining your name, that's fine. Just know that you're going to go through some different emotions and some feelings. So it might be a good idea, if you feel like you're struggling with that, to go ahead and get some counseling for that, or reach out to your church family, people who are rooted and grounded, who are elders in your church, who will give you godly wisdom. Just have divorce care. And so you can, even if you don't have time to go to the divorce care classes, reach out to the leadership, the people who hold those classes, and just have a telephone conversation or a one-on-one. Invite them to lunch after church or something like that, to help you to kind of get over that period where you're adjusting to your new identity. Okay, so just know. Now, the second thing was, I was asked, what if you legally wanted to change your name? Okay, now it depends on where you are in the process, or if you're still in the process. Okay, now I'm not sure where you live. You could be watching this from anywhere in the country. I'm going to use Texas as an example because that's where I am, and that's where I'm licensed, even though I'm also licensed to practice law in New York. Where I'm going to use Texas as an example. Okay, now if you are still in the process of divorce, or if you haven't started a divorce yet, you can have your name changed as a process in your divorce. It's one of the requests that you can make in your original petition for divorce. You just need to make sure that in your final decree of divorce, that there's a name change. And the main thing that the courts are looking for, it's absolutely fine if you want to change your name back to your maiden name. That's natural and normal for you to want to do if you're not going to maintain your name for the kids' sake. the courts want to make sure, number one, that you're not changing your name to avoid your creditors. So they'll make you say that when you go to finalize your divorce. They'll say, are you changing your name to avoid creditors? You'll say no. The second thing is they want to make sure that you're not changing your name to avoid prosecution for something. So in other words, if you've been charged with a crime, they want to make sure you're not changing your name so that the DA can't find you. So just as long as you're not, you're not in those two arenas, you're not trying to avoid your creditors and you're not trying to avoid prosecution, you're usually good to go, okay? Okay, so you can, number one, you can do that during your divorce process. You can ask for your name to be changed back to your maiden name. And you just say, Judge, this is my maiden name, my former name, my former identity, my family name. That's perfectly normal and natural. That's fine. Now, the tricky part is, what if you're trying to change your name if you've already been divorced already? And I'm going to say it depends. It depends on when your decree was signed. When were your final divorce papers signed? Okay, so letter A to that is, if it was signed within 30 days, if you rush in and go ahead and file for a name change, the court will still have the ability to review that within 30 days of your divorce. If your divorce was beyond 30 days, again, you have to check the rules of the state that you live in, but we're using Texas as an example. So if it's beyond the 30 days, if it's more than 30 days since the court signed your final divorce papers, then you usually have to kind of start over and you have to pay the full fee over again, which is almost $300 here in Texas. You have to pay a filing fee to get your name changed. And you just say, Judge, I didn't do this during my divorce, but I want to have my name changed back to my maiden name, and you're able to do that. Again, just as long as you're not avoiding prosecution and avoiding your creditors, okay? So that's the answer. So again, the tricky part is, if your divorce papers were signed within 30 days of you going in and filing for your name change, usually it's a lot cheaper. You can usually do it opposed to $300 when you're doing it later on. So I hope that answers your question. So whatever state that you live in, please, you can contact your local bar association. If you live in a major city, like say for example, I'm going to use Dallas. Dallas has their own bar association because the city is big enough. If you live in a smaller city, you can check your county bar association in the county that you live in. And most of the time when you do that, get a referral for your bar association, you can get a deep discount on usually like a half-hour consultation. Would be less than $50. You sit down, you write down all your questions. If you have a question about your name change, or if you have a question about your final decree of divorce, you're not quite sure what it means, use that as an opportunity to go ahead and write down and get all your questions answered within that half hour. Make sure you maximize that time that you have with your local attorney, okay? So I hope that fully answers your question. Okay, so you might go through a name change. And for me, let me just give you quickly my testimony. I reverted back to Richardson is my maiden name. That's my family name. And so when I got married, I hyphenated my name. And I did that for reasons that, I'm just going to be honest, the reasons for me that were they came from a very hurtful place. I, again, was wounded emotionally when I was younger because of things that I went through. And so I grew up with, I'm not going to rely on a man, and I'm going to feel, I'm not going to get married. And so when I finally did decide to get married, it was always a very foreign concept for me to change my name. I was like, oh my goodness, my name's going to be different. I didn't grow up thinking, oh, I'm going to be Mrs. So-and-so and practice, when I was a little kid, whatever little boy I liked. I didn't sit down and practice, writing his name, as my own last name. I just didn't grow up as a little girl doing that, even though I played with Barbies and stuff like that. But I had a very different and alternate concept of marriage and what that looks like. And for me, at first I wasn't even going to change my name at all, but then I decided to hyphenate it. But now I understand, all the reasons why you do change your name, and, and all that good stuff, which is beyond the topic for today. Maybe that might be something that I'll talk about at another time. But So for me, most people, already knew that, my last name was Richardson. My married name was Richardson hyphen Harris. So when I got divorced, I dropped the Harris, obviously, and just reverted back to Richardson. And so that was a different dynamic for me. I didn't have children in my marriage, so I wasn't worried about having the same last name as my kids and making it easier, when school officials contact me and all that good stuff. Them recognizing who I am because, that might be an issue because I have a different last name for my kids. I didn't have that as an issue. And so for me, I wanted to make a clean break. I didn't want to, for me, I felt like carrying his last name wasn't quite closure for me. Again, because it's different. I don't have to interact with him because we don't have kids together. There's a totally different dynamic when you have to co-parent. I get that. And again, it's normal and natural to keep that last name because it just makes life easier for you if your kids are still young and in school. It just does. It just makes life easier. And so if you can make it easier for yourself, make it easier. Nothing wrong with that. We want easy. We want to press the easy button, right? And so for me, I wanted to make a clean break. I didn't want his identity or the identity from the marriage anymore. And it made it easier for me emotionally to be able to kind of move on in that way. And that was just my testimony, my particular circumstance. I get it that, it's different for, moms that have to co-parent with their ex and make things a little bit easier for school and all that good stuff. And it's also, it's a pain in the butt to go ahead and change your Social Security card back. Because if you don't do that's another thing. Another quick tip. And as quickly as possible, get that squared away and change on your Social Security card because that will be an issue when you go ahead and pay and file for your taxes the following year. What happened to a lot of people that I know is they changed their name back. They didn't do it on their Social Security card, but when they went to file for their taxes, they filed for their taxes in their maiden name, and then that ended up being an issue. IRS was like, okay, that there's no match between your Social Security, your name on your Social Security card, and then now you're filing your tax return. So you have to just go ahead and get it's a simple form that you have with the Social Security Administration. Just go ahead and fill that out and send that in and get that changed. But it's a job getting that changed. Your job, having all of your paperwork changed over with HR and all that stuff. It's a job, but for me, it was worth it because I had to have that clean break. And for me, this might sound strange, and I don't know if some of you may feel this way, but I felt like if I kept his last name, I didn't want, that he still could claim a piece of me that I didn't want anymore. And so I don't know if any of you actually felt that out there, but that was the main reason why I decided to go ahead and change my name. And so just know it just depends on how you feel, and it's so individual for everyone. And don't feel bad if you feel like, oh, I wish I could change my name, but it's just easier for me to keep it for my kids. It makes sense because it still helps the kids to adjust too, that it's not such dramatic change for them. And so look at it that way. I really find that to be true for a lot of my friends who are co-parenting with their ex, that the kids don't feel like it's such a rejection of dad, that, they feel afraid to feel affection for their dads around you because you feel like, they feel like, oh, mom's, it's a total rejection. She wants nothing to do with dad. So I get that. Okay. And so the dynamics for that, I'm just giving my testimony as to why I decided to go ahead and change my name back. Okay, so in that way, I really felt like I can just reclaim who I was and get to tap into who that girl was before I got married. That girl that was fearless, who thought that she was going to take the world by storm. So there's nothing wrong by being awakening that young girl, that that girl that was just fearless and was ready to jump out and run, just run as fast after God and after the destiny and purposes on my life and on your life. And so sometimes a name change, or sometimes just that break in the view of your identity from your ex, really allows you that freedom, that really gives you that key that unlocks that young girl that's still inside of you. She's still there. She's still there. Fierce and not fearing a thing from the world. Tap into her. She's there. That's the way you tap into your identity. Remember who you were. She's there. Okay. And in closing, let me just make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay. One of the other things about reclaiming your identity after your breakup is making sure that you are establishing healthy boundaries, especially if you are co-parenting with your ex. Sometimes I find some women who are still telling their ex everything. You know, usually that's not such a good idea. I mean, you can tell them everything about what's going on with the kids. I mean, yeah, absolutely do that. Absolutely do that. If you have a decent relationship with your ex and you're able to actually talk to them on the phone without, you know, shooting darts at each other, then absolutely do that. But make sure that you have healthy boundaries, that you don't need to tell them about every little thing about your life. You know, you're perfectly allowed now to maintain your privacy. So it's a shift in a different dynamic that way. You're not confiding in him anymore. And so sometimes too, be careful. I'm not saying this that you know every ex out there is doing this, every ex-husband's out there doing this, but sometimes, you know, exes will, you know, draw information from you and be very friendly to later on use against you. You know, if you end up back in court for whatever reason, if you end up in a custody battle, child support, whatever it is, you know, if you start giving really intimate details still about your life, then they'll end up using that against you. So just another little tip, okay? Be careful about that, you know, because sometimes, you know, everything might be sunshine and a bowl of cherries right now. But, you know, 2 years from now, when you might have a disagreement, or, you know, the new dynamics when, you know, he may get remarried and you have the cheerleader who's, you know, might be interfering about what's going on, and, you know, there might be a custody battle or whatever that is, you know, so don't give them too many intimate details about your life, okay? So set healthy boundaries that way, about what you say to your ex. Get your key back. I am shocked a lot of times, you know, after divorce is, you know, if your wife is still staying in the same apartment or the same house, she won't change the lock, so she won't get the key back. Get your key back. It's another way to set a healthy boundary and establishing your new identity as a single mom or as a single woman. Get your key back. Okay, and get his name off of your bills. If you want to really feel that break and that healthy disconnection from your ex, get his name off of your bills. It still feels like you're still married. It's like, you know, I want to go through this adjustment. I want to get to the other side of this. Your bills, okay? And sometimes, again, that's almost like a part-time job in and of itself, to contact the cell phone company, to contact the utilities, the water, you know, all that stuff. I get it. So it gives is, and this is surprising too, when my ex left, he still had boxes of crap still at the house. I'm like, would you come get the rest of your stuff? Get your stuff. And I know it's not fair. I know it's not fair, but I had to get to the point where I had to box up his stuff and go and deliver it to him, you know, because we're not allowed to, you know, just automatically just throw his stuff out. Now, what I did was I sent him a certified letter and said, look, you know, if you don't come by, you know, give him at least 30 days. If you don't come by 30 days from the date of this letter, then I'm either going to donate or dispose of your stuff. But I was extra nice and said, you know, all right, fine. I knew where he was, and so I just went and boxed it up and delivered his stuff. And some of it also I had to have some of it shipped to his family. It's a long story. I'm not going to bother to tell you why I had to do that. But, you know, there were pictures of his father who's deceased and pictures of his sister who was deceased. And I didn't want to be, you know, a so-and-so and throw those things out. I know eventually he's going to want to have those things of his dear family, close family members who are no longer with us. Okay, there we go. We're back. All right. So those are the things that you can do to reclaim, you know, your space, you know, get his stuff out of your house, out of your apartment, reclaim your space, reclaim it. That's another important way that you can reestablish your identity as a single mom and a single woman. So I hope that you find these Lunch with Laura little coaching sessions, I guess if you want to call them that. I hope you found them helpful. You know, feel free. I love to hear from you. If you're watching live, feel free to type a chat and type a comment in the chat section, or if you're watching the tape version of this, leave a comment. I'm sure, you know, whatever you have to say will help someone or be helpful to someone. You may read it later on. And so I'd love to hear from you. Or if you want to send me an email, you can send me an email at clientcare@howtomoveonafterdivorce.com. So enjoy the rest of your lunch and enjoy the rest of your day.